What are your reflections on the first day of the forum? What have you been interested in, and what are you here to discuss?
Well, education, I think, is a theme everybody talks about, and everybody thinks is able to talk with certain level of authority because everybody has gone to school, but it's not that easy. And education is probably the most hit sector in the pandemic, in the way I saw it, because keeping children outside of schools, keeping children learning in different ways can be good and can be bad because not all the countries are in the same technological levels, not all the teachers, even in the same country, are in the same level. So it has been a very difficult time for education.
How do you see that the pandemic will have fundamentally changed approaches to education and educational policy?
I think it has changed the policy because it has happened a lot of little things during the pandemic that changed the way of view of the people who are responsible for taking the decisions in the government. For instance, the people who work in the government and have children, they don't look their children in the right way until the pandemic. It was normal to hear in the first months of the pandemic that that people start feeling the way teachers feel every day. And because, for us, for the people working in the government, the days are very long, usually, and we watch our children with love and a lot of care, but we don't really know what they do at school for most of the people. And I guess during the pandemics, other people outside the education areas started to make opinions. Some of them very valid, some of them not that valid at all. But everybody started making opinion about children because they start living with children, really living with children. And during the first months, we actually in my country, in Ecuador, we have to take some strong decisions. We never stopped education, even though people were very well and still are very afraid of the pandemics. And there are other certain things that didn't change. For instance, education meals, food we gave it at homes or we gave it at school, so people can go and pick for weeks. But it's been very difficult to make policy decisions because everybody thinks is capable of make opinion about education.
Have you seen any kind of discrepancy in the communities that have been disrupted in an educational sense? Any differences in the makeup of that community and how they've been affected by the pandemic, the education that is, and how would they begin to build back and kind of trying to reverse some of the issues that we've seen?
For instance, at the first time in the pandemics, people feel like it was very important to receive a lot of technological education, so the internet covered more spaces and access to the internet, receive the right equipment and to receive classes. But certain months after that, people feel that doesn't was the right way that wasn't the right way to front education in pandemic times. So what we did is, as a society, is value the importance of education person to person, and it has been a hard way, especially in Latin America, because people were very afraid and they distrust government and institutions as well. So they didn't believe that going back to school was okay because of safety, because of health reasons. But now, finally, people is starting to feel it's the way to learn. That a screen cannot be an extension of a classroom. That a teacher talking to a camera is not normal. It's not the right way. Even though that's the way people understand education, virtual education, that's not virtual education. Virtual education, has a different methodology and different resources, but at the first and up till now, people doesn't understand it the way. That's one of the reasons we have to go back to school and to value technological education, but not feel that's enough.
Yeah. So staying with that point, what is your perspective on the notion that the pandemic has, I suppose, accelerated the digitization of education and potentially in some areas modernized it, because it's kind of been forced upon the sector that, okay, suddenly you've got all the children back at home, you've had to find solutions to that, and that's brought about more digital learning platforms. What's your perception of that perspective, that it's actually accelerated a move in that area?
Yeah, it has. Yeah. It did accelerate. In a superficial way, maybe, because you have access to an equipment, you have a internet connection, connectivity. You can see even your teacher, but that acceleration doesn't mean that people actually is using technologically in education the way it is supposed to be. We have these reports talking about children who are connected to their class and they are not paying attention at all. That the teachers, even though the capacitation has make incredible advances in numbers of quantity, it has not been enough, because the teachers still don't know how to teach well through a screen, or they are limited by the technology itself. For instance, when the pandemic started, I was teaching, and in a screen you can see 16 little spaces. One of them is yours, so I can only see 15 of my students. I had 30 students in my class, so the 15 other students I even don't know what they are doing, and so it's fictional that the technology can replace education in a good pedagogic way, because it's not. It's an illusion, and maybe what we are supposed to do is change the methodology of the education class virtually, but there's no time enough to capacitate thousands of children, of teachers in each country, and thousands of families, because the family has to be the support of the children at home. And that takes to another problem, that is that education at homes works differently, even though we have the same teacher, even though you have the same technology, but the work must be supported by a family that has not always the same resources, cultural backgrounds, or different issues and cannot help children in the same way.
Well, the educational experience of the last 2 years for these students who have had to go through this almost forced experiment of mass digital learning and online learning, how do you think that will manifest itself in the future in effect on them? Where is that seen? Is that seen later on as they progress towards higher education? What might that look like?
I think we are going to have hard times with children, especially teenagers who 2 years ago were still by the law, by mandate of law, they were teenagers, and now some of them are adults, and they have to make choices, and they haven't seen their community, the education in a way we as a society normally look at 2 years ago. So I guess it will be very hard, and we will find different kinds of problems in the very little children. For instance, we know right now we are having some adaptations problem because they live with their families and they live in these protection bubbles, and now that they go out, families don't feel safe, not only because of COVID, but because they are used now to protect their children in a way it's not meant to be, because children learn playing, learn experiencing with other children other age. So I guess it's too soon to know, but the fastest we come to real life, to real experiencing, to face-to-face familiarity with other kids, they are going to be better than we thought. But there are certain countries that still 2 years after the beginning of the pandemic do not have a full return to schools, and these countries will have a harder time.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you able to talk to the perception among students and learners today of the education experience? Anecdotally, what has that experience been like? What are their reflections? Can you talk to that?
Yes. We made a social program in Ecuador about 9 months ago. Yeah. In that time in Ecuador, there were no return to schools, but pilots, certain places where there was no COVID. And then we started this experiment called Let's See Each Us Together, and we opened schools not for the students of that school, but for the students in those neighborhoods, so we can watch them, we can see them, we can hear from them. And what they say is that they were not learning in the same way. Some say they were not learning at all. And there were a lot of students who didn't come, and that was an alert for us, because schools, they are not just for learning something, but it's a way the society reacts to protect the children. And sadly, sometimes violence comes in their own homes. So we didn't see that children. We know something is happening to them at that home, and that was the beginning of a search that finally went to certain houses, checked for the kids, for the teenagers who are alone for long hours, because the schools were still closed while their parents were going out for work. So the teenagers were for hours alone at their that's what they thought. Yeah. They were alone, but they weren't. They were at home. They were escaping homes and returning before their parents come back. So it was a good experiment, and also we can hear from the teachers. The teachers, many teachers say they were not prepared to deal with certain problems through a screen, not only because they cannot see their kids, but because they have connectivity problems too. Yeah. If you have 30 or 20 kids and they are still connected, and everybody turns on the camera, suddenly your internet collapses. Yeah. So they say this is not the best way to know what's happening with our kids.
Has there been any unexpected, perhaps, positive outcome from the change that's been forced upon education? I know certainly back home where I'm from, there's discussions about modernizing education and need for that still, and you see industries moving on very quickly and industries innovating, and education doesn't move as fast, arguably. Yeah. Is there any positive benefit to come from the disruption that's been seen on education during the pandemic?
Yeah, the first, it has been, I think it's positive that there is, for many children, this was the time where they finally meet technology in a very useful way. Besides social media, watching some videos, they find a way to connect to other kids, to other teenagers. That was in first moment, that is good. That they lose their fear maybe to certain technological stuff, even though the kids don't have fear to technology, but maybe their parents begin to trust them using their computers, using their tablets. That's good. I think that it's also good for the families to have time with their kids when families are not violent or something. So it has been good in that way too. Sadly, that's not the rule for everybody, but I guess it has these aspects has been good. The bad side has been too long, yeah. Maybe, but I guess it will be good for the children to become familiarized with technology and maybe start advancing in the way the society is now advancing. But you said something important, and it's that education has not changed. The other day, I participated in an event back in Ecuador, and we communicate in a different way now than 50 years ago, We talk to each other in a different way now. We travel in a different way. Everything is different from 50 years ago, but education. We are still learning in the same way. We are still sitting in rows before a teacher who is making these expositions every day, and they are not preparing our youth to confront the future.